Okay, let's get going. Welcome everybody to the Irish Laser Association pre-season trainings webinar again. Thank you all for joining us this evening and taking time out of your busy schedules. This is already, would you believe, our 5th session, and today's session is preparing for World Championships and big events using the upcoming 4.7 Worlds, which are taking place in Dunleary this August. We've Aisling Keller who's looking after this session. Aisling is our Irish Laser Association Training Officer. And just before we go to Aisling, I just want to give you a quick thanks to everyone who donated to the RNLI on behalf of Jack and Toby last week. And they've told me they've hit nearly €800. So once again, thanks very much for that. Aisling, over to you.
Thanks, Ross, and thanks everybody for tuning in. This one is preparing for 4.7 Worlds this summer, but also just big competitions in general. But just saying big, it doesn't mean it has to be international or anything. It can be like the nationals, or it can be applicable to anything. So I will get started. I'm going to share my screen now. Now, can you see that? Okay, so let's start. Oops. So this is just a bit that I took from the Notice a Race, which is up already. So you can see here, 7th of August, registration, measurement, which is equipment inspection, and charter boat allocation, which all of you will have your own boats anyways. And the 8th is the same, and then you have the practice race and the opening ceremony as well, and then you have all your racing. And you already have some information about the first warning signal. Every day is going to be 12. Now that obviously, like, that probably will change, but the first day anyways will be 12, and you'll see what time the practice races, and on the last day, no warning signal can be made after 3. So that's that, and that's just the link for the Notice a Race if you want to have a look. And now, so what can you be doing now to prepare? So if you're aiming for the 4.7 Worlds, make sure that you've entered. Closing day is the 7th of July. That's just the link for entry, and the kind of you'll find all the information there. You can be training, obviously, the fitness side of it. Last week's talk, I had talked about all that side of things, and on the water. So we'll talk more about on the water stuff. So I just included this it's a really handy thing to do to identify goals, because sometimes when you're sailing, especially now when there's not been any regattas and stuff to test yourself, it's kind of hard to think, like, what can I do? Like, what should I be doing to improve? Like, where is my weak spots and where are my downfalls and what am I strong at? So this is something that I did often enough when I was sailing laser, just to kind of regroup and say, like, after the first time you've done it, you can be like, oh, I actually got better in this, I scored myself better and stuff. I know it is subjective, but it's your own point of view, and you have to try and be realistic as well. So sailing is split into technical, tactical, physical, and mental. And within all of these little subheadings, you have loads of different things you can put down. I only put down a few. Like technical, there's so many things you can put in technical. Tacking, jibing. Tacking can be, light, medium, windy, can be flat water, can be wavy water. Jibing can be the same. Acceleration in all the different wind speeds. Wave technique, that's upwind, downwind, windy, light, chop, rollers. The list goes on, and the same with upwind and downwind speed. And even within upwind and downwind, you have main sheet work, you have tiller, you have hiking. The list just goes on. But as you start making the list, things will start coming to us. So don't panic if you are a little bit lost or anything looking at that. So physical is a little bit more straightforward. You have your endurance. So do you get tired pretty quickly on the water? Power, can you say coming off the top of a wave, can you swing your shoulders down and flatten the boat and like have some power in certain moments, like off the line, say in a windy race? Strength, that's just, do you feel like you're strong enough for the boat? And hiking fitness, which is probably the most important, because if you can hike in the wind, you're nearly guaranteed to be fast. So then tactical is all about positioning yourself relative to the fleet. Toby did a pretty good talk on strategy and tactics. If you missed that, you could go back and look at that, but that was really good. But tactical, you have your start positioning, so that's you relative to the other boats, how you decide everything, how you position yourself relative to the fleet, making your plans before the race and throughout the race. So, when you're rounding the gate mark, maybe to go on to a second upwind, making a plan before you round the gate. Risk management. So say you're leading a race, you're not going to go off and bang a corner, because that would just be too risky. And you have to do risk versus reward. And mental, so you have your mental preparation for racing and for regatta, your self-talk. That's if you get a bad start, for example, and you're talking to yourself like, oh, that was so bad, why did I do that? Rather than, okay, that just happened, let's park it and let's focus on what I can do now to move myself up the fleet and stuff like that. So self-talk can be negative or positive. So we always want that positive self-talk. And you just recognize what type of self-talk you have and work on it if you find that you do have some negative self-talk. Another example would be if it's really windy and you're hiking and it's, you're in pain, like everybody else is, you can just tell yourself, everybody else is in as much pain as me or even more, so I just have to keep going, blah, blah, blah. So dealing with pressure, your attention span on the water, after a few days of racing, especially, attention span can go out the window. Confidence and excitement versus anxiety. So for big regattas, you might be very nervous. Nerves aren't a bad thing. Most people will have nerves, but trying to turn those nerves into an excitement rather than kind of a bit of a dread, that's anxiety. That's a really key thing to do. And it comes with practice, it comes with being kind to yourself and with that self-talk and stuff. So with each of these things, you can mark yourself 0 to 10. So 0 could be someone who's just started sailing, and 10 being the best in the world. Now, I'm lucky enough that I've raced and trained with the best in the world, but a lot of people haven't. So just use your imagination. And so this thing I have in the corner is SMART goals. So that's just to help you make your goals. So make them quite specific, measurable. That's why you mark it 0 to 10. Attainable. So don't say you've marked yourself a 3 in roll tax. It's not really realistic. Say, okay, in a month, I'm going to be a 10. You need more time. Relevant. So we have all these goals here are relevant and time-based. So try and say, okay, I'm a 3 now in tacking. By the end of the month, I'm going to go sailing every weekend. I want to be a 4. So I just think that's a nice thing to do, especially at the moment when it's been hard. There's no regattas. If you've been sailing at all, you've been sailing by yourself. So it's a really nice thing to identify a few little things. And I found anyways, if I went sailing by myself, I found it pretty boring. So it's, if you have like 3 or 4 things that you're like, okay, these are what I'm going to work on today, an hour will pass by pretty fast, rather than if you're going out and you don't really have a goal or a plan for the session. So that's just that. So now that you've identified your strengths and your weaknesses, you can make a bit of a plan. So you can make your weaknesses into a strength. Get out in the water, onto the hiking bench, into the gym, on the bike, go for runs, whatever you think. Sorry, in the background, there might be some background noise now. But if you want some training ideas for whatever you think your weakness is, there's a chance to ask at the end. So now, T-minus 60 days to the start of your competition. This is a good time to be building up your fitness. So like I said, last week's talk, if you missed it, you can go back and watch it, but I went into quite a bit of detail into what type of fitness you can be doing to get better at laser sailing on the water at the like T-minus 60 days, so 2 months before the regatta. You should be focusing a bit more on speed and technique rather than racing. So sessions could be 70% speed and technique and 30% starts and races. So an ideal session would be warm up with boat handling. So you could go out, do windward, leeward, last boat is at a rabbit, even tacking on the whistle, stuff like that. And then 2 hours of speed up and down. You can mix this up, say, with straight line speed. So it's purely you're focusing on yourself and your own boat and just trying to go as fast as possible. And then free tacking. So there might be a mark up ahead, or whoever is in the rib will drive up ahead and they'll be the windward mark. That's nice to do when you've done a few kind of straight line speeds to kind of tune in with what's going on, what the conditions are of the day, if they're shifty or whatever. So, and then towards the end, you could do 40 minutes to an hour of start practice and racing. It's kind of nice to finish with a bit of start practice and racing anyways in a session. So I know you probably would be tired at this stage, especially if it's a windy day, and 3 hours on the water is no joke, especially when it's windy. But that's just an example. If you feel like 3 hours is too long, you just use the ratios and change it accordingly. So, and going back, if you've identified a particular weakness, make sure you're fitting that in too. That could be as simple as if you're working on tacks, you can just say to your coach, look, I'm working on tacks at the end of every straight line speed. When you blow the whistle to stop, can we get the whole group to tack rather than just stop? So you get to practice a nice tack in at the end of the speed. And that could be, at least 10 extra tacks in a day, and they all add up. So T-minus 30 days. So we've 1 month to go. So your trainings, as you come closer to the regatta, are going to become more race focused. It depends on your goals and your needs. If you've really identified, you're like, okay, I actually think I'm good at starts, and I really want to focus on my speed more, then, this is just a rule of thumb. There's going to be exceptions. So sessions could be around 60% speed and technique and 40% start and race focus. So, do your boat handling for a warm-up, speed sessions, and then come back and do some starts and races. So a month before the regatta starts, you want to make sure you have all your equipment sorted, especially nowadays. It takes quite a while to get things if you want to get them shipped over from the UK even. So you kind of want to be getting this sorted pretty like around now or even before, like a month before. So you're going to need a racing sail, be it a new sail or a relatively new sail in around that. Don't forget your IRLs for World Championships and European Championships, and diamonds for girls. I went to my first 4.7 Worlds and didn't have IRLs, and it's pretty hard to make an oar out of just random pieces of sail tape and stuff. So save yourself the hassle and get those IRLs now. A spares bag. So I would really recommend, if you're in a group and you've a coach or just some support boat on the water, or even if you don't have that, I would really recommend having a spares bag, because if you break something on the water, then you have to go all the way in to repair it. So if you have a spares bag on the water, it's just take the broken thing off and put the new thing on. So if you are on a team, if you're sharing a support boat with 5 or 6 others or whatever, you can make up the spares bag between you. Now, obviously, if 2 kickers break on the same day, the second person is going to lose out. But that's a chance you want to take if you don't want to buy a whole new spares bag, or maybe have a brother or somebody who's not going to be sailing that week and just take all their controls. Chances are, if you've set up your boat pretty well, you're not going to need it, but it's always the wrong time when something breaks. So that's that. Sailing gear. So during a big competition, a good dry bag is key. So Squall Sailing, they just set up pretty recently up in Northern Ireland, and they have some really nice dry bags, like here, this grey one. So that's just their link, and they have loads of other bits. So if you are looking at buying something, you should have a look at that. And a good jacket to wear out on the race course and between races can be really handy, especially in Ireland. It might be a bit chilly, and if you don't want to wear a really thick wetsuit top, if it is a bit cold, then a jacket to wear in between races just so you don't get cold can be handy. Now, I didn't bother with jackets some of the time, but like, it doesn't have to be a fancy offshore jacket or anything like that. It can be as simple as like an oversized raincoat or something, just so you don't get cold. Now, the zips might get corroded if it's not like a kind of sailing jacket, but just so you know, it doesn't have to be fancy. So 2 weeks before the World start or your big competition start, training becomes more race focused again. So you're gonna be doing a little less speed work and a little bit more race focused. For the 4.7 Worlds in Dún Laoghaire, you have home advantage, which is a huge advantage compared to people traveling to come over. So chances are you're going to be able to find out where the race areas are. So there's probably going to be 2 race areas. If you're from Dún Laoghaire and you're going to be sailing leading up to the regatta like all summer in Dún Laoghaire, then you might notice some race courses might have a trend, like say it could be a sea breeze day. More than likely you're going to want to go right. So you might say, okay, let's just put a little bit more focus on starting at the committee boat and tacking off right and having a clear lane to the right. Now, that isn't to say the day that a sea breeze comes in Dún Laoghaire that you're going to win the race if you go right. It's unpredictable still, but it would be nice to have that in your toolbox. And you can feel a little bit more prepared than other people. You can probably book in for measurement now. Whatever email you use to enter the regatta, you'll get an email. Could be around now, could be before. I always like to book in my measurement 2 days before racing started, but we'll actually get into that anyways. So you can continue with your fitness, but start to taper. So taper is just kind of you're easing off, and you're by the time racing starts, you're full of energy and you're not tired at all. So you start to taper around 10 days before the regatta. So that just means less interval work and more steady state cardio for your training outside of sailing. And if you are doing gym work, you basically just lift less. All your lifts should be sub max. So you're kind of doing similar movements, similar gym sessions than before, but you're doing it all with less weight. With your cardio, you wouldn't leave out interval work completely, but you could do shorter intervals. Like if you're running, you might do like a few like 10-second sprints or like accelerations, and the same with cycling. So you're just kind of priming your body to be full of energy and ready to fight by the time the Worlds come around, or whatever competition you're aiming for. So a week before the competition starts, so you're really getting close now. Your training is very race focused. You're warming up with the speed and boat handling, and then straight into starts and races. Usually, depends on your needs at the time. You're also tapering now, so training outside should be pretty easy, but try to sail most days. And definitely the 2 weeks before the regatta starts, try to be on the hiking bench most days if you're not sailing, or if it's been light wind, because if you don't hike for 2 weeks before a competition and it's 20 knots for a few days, you're going to be in a bit of pain. But it's doing hiking bench and hiking practice is a really easy and efficient way to be pretty fast in the wind. Now, I say easy and efficient, it does hurt, but it is pretty time efficient, rather than if you don't have time to get out in the water someday, go down. If you don't have a hiking bench, I used to practice off my boat as well. So if it's nearby, just pop down and just make sure you're sitting forward on the boat so the hull or the stern doesn't fall down. But some other nations might have arrived by now. They probably have. So it's a really, really good chance to race your competitors in a pressure-free zone. Those races they'll be really good. They usually are really good. They might be a bit like there's not going to be a jury or anything like that. So don't be frustrated if some cheeky Italians or whatever are taking your spots and you don't think they should be. But in the lead up to the regatta, there's usually an atmosphere around. So just have fun and enjoy the atmosphere and the lead up, and try to soak it all in. To avoid any stress in the lead up, make sure you're organized, all your equipment is sorted, and everything is checked off the to-do list. So you have your race sail is ready, your spares bag is ready, you have all the sailing gear you want, you have a jacket if you want it, and just try not to leave anything if anything's going to break or anything like that. Just try to be prepared. Just try to eliminate any extra stress. I had a funny situation during a World Championships where I was in Japan and I had a bit of a passport issue because I was going to China after Japan to visit my brother, but I hadn't got a visa for China, so I had to send my passport back to Ireland. And I was waiting during the World Championships to get my passport back in Japan, and it arrived like the day before I had to fly, which was like leading into the last day of the World. So I mean, it was nice to have my passport the last day of the Worlds. Maybe that made me sail a bit better, but it's something that, if it can be avoided, you should avoid it. I definitely should have avoided that, but it's a funny story now. So 3 days before the Worlds, this is the day before measurement. So, well, you can measure the day of, like the day after this day or the day after that, but make sure you're all set for it. So you want to plan your rest days. I usually liked to take 2 days off sailing, maybe do like a small bit of hiking bench, 2 days before the championship, but you just have to plan your rest days so you wouldn't sail the 3 days leading up to the Worlds. Worlds is 6 days, so that means you're going to sail 9 days in a row. But usually what I would do would sail this day and take the next 2 days off. But if you want to take this day off, you can do that and just sail one of the other 2 days. So just don't get caught and be like, oh, sugar, I actually sailed 3 days leading up to the regatta. You want to set goals for the regatta. So there's outcome goals and there's process goals. Your outcome goals is where you would like to finish. That an example of that is gold fleet, or top 50, top 20, whatever it is. That is less important. Process goals are really the important one. So process goals are the goals that are linked to the process. For example, it could be you want to complete your pre-race prep every day, or you want to start in the front row, or you want to get a transit for every start. So there's no amount of these process goals. They're linked to they're very individual, like. So it's what you've been working on. Like, I'm trying to think, some of my ones could have been definitely mark checks were an important one for me. So it was just before I rounded a mark, I did my mark check, and it was just look to see where the next mark is and make a little plan. So say I was rounding the top mark going on a reach, I would look to see, did the jibe mark seem high or low? And I decided if I was going to go low on the reach or high on the reach, or the wind above the mark. So if it looked like a big gust was coming down, I would go low first, take the wind with the gust. So that's just an example. So T-minus 2 days, you can measure today or tomorrow. So set up your boat. And the setup for measurement is like these guys here. So you have your bottom mast in, you have your boom attached, you've all your systems set up, your kicker on, your downhaul on, your outhaul on. This guy has his handles on. You don't need to do that if you don't want to. Your main sheet, then you have your sail rolled up on your boat, your top mast. Make sure that doesn't fall off. Carbon top mast is not cheap. You have your daggerboard just ready to be seen. And his tiller is on his boat, but you have to take out your tiller out of the rudder. Some tillers are like jammed into the rudder. So just before you get to the measurement, try and take it out, because it can slow up the whole show. And they might ask to see your life jacket. Usually they don't, but they might. And if you use a compass, have this on your boat. And it's fairly straightforward. I know first time I was measuring, I was kind of like a little bit overwhelmed by it, but it is fairly straightforward, and everybody is going to be doing it these 2 days anyway. So if you're stuck, just ask, and I'm sure people will be happy to help. There'll be loads of Irish around anyways. So the day before measurement, so you have registration, measurement, and practice race. So make sure, try and get all this sorted. If you measured the day before, you can do your registration already that day. I usually like to not approach the club. I usually like to get away the day before racing, just to kind of separate myself. But you can do the practice race this day. That's if it's your first World Championship, your first big event. I think I would recommend it. It's a bit of crack, and if you're expecting some really serious race, it's not. It's usually just you get to see what the committee boat is like. You get to see like how big the marks and stuff are. Usually you don't get like a proper start, because people are just sailing over the line, and you can just sail to the top mark and you can go in, or you can do the full race, even though they say doing the full race is bad luck, but you can do whatever floats your boat. So read through the sailing instructions if you haven't already, and just soak up the atmosphere, enjoy the opening ceremony. Opening ceremonies can be really cool. It's usually you are with your whole team, like all the Irish would be together with an Irish flag. You might have like a little mascot, some local younger guy, and you might say walk around, do a parade. There might be a few speeches and then food or something like that. Now, saying that this year is probably going to be different, but they usually are pretty nice to do and they're a bit of crack as well. So try to make friends with other international sailors. I made friends when I was just like starting to do international events, and I'm still friends with them now. So it's definitely like you're going to be nice and comfortable within all the Irish. There's going to be like a load of you there, probably 30 or more. So go outside your comfort zone and try to talk to some of the international guys. If it looks like a windy week, make sure you fuel up and eat a lot today. So like a windy week, you just kind of get more tired, and it's hard to eat enough that it's hard to eat like all the energy you're expending. So on this day, eat a lot of carbs, just be kind to your body and fuel it for the week. Have everything ready for tomorrow. Don't be leaving stuff till the morning time, and have a plan as to where your lunch bag will be in the water. So if you don't really know, will you have somebody on the water, like a coach or even like one of your parents, will they be on a rib on the water? You can always pop your boat or your lunch bag into the pin end, which I've done a few times, and the pin end stays anchored all day. So it's pretty safe rather than putting it into a safety rib, because they might be off rescuing somebody when you've finished your race. So you mightn't get food in between a race. Now, race day. So arrive in lots of time. Eat before you go on the water. So first day is the warning signal is 12 o'clock. Depending on where the race course is, like if it's a long race, if it's a long sail out, you want to launch a bit earlier, but probably in Dunleary, it might be like, depending on the wind direction, I guess. But if it's kind of outside the harbour and like to the left, it might only take you like half an hour to sail out. It might take you more time, or even 20 minutes. But just take that into consideration when you're planning what time to launch at. Make sure you check your flight. So if there's more than 60 boats, which there probably will be, there's going to be flights. So you can check this the day before as well, and double check, like don't make a mistake with this and you put either a ribbon on your sail or a mast sticker on, and they just give you them. And so launch at least 60 minutes before the start time. If it's a long sail out, you want to be launching earlier. Note what start you are. So you could even be third start. Do your race prep on the water, have fun, and be prepared for waiting. If you've seen the forecast and it doesn't look very promising, if it's pretty light, just be prepared for waiting. So always bring a bit of extra food. So on the water, when you get out there, you're going to do a speed check. You're going to do a split tack. So your speed check can be by yourself just to get the feel of things, and then you can do it with a teammate. Just line up and go for a few minutes, and then tack and go for a few minutes, and then come down and just like get a feel for the day's conditions, what the waves are like, what the wind is like, what way you should set up your boat. Check the tide. So with your split tack as well, that's checking sides. If it's really shifty, that doesn't really matter. But yeah, check the tide. So you're going to do your start line prep. You have to get a transit. You have to get a bias. There's a few ways of getting bias. You can use a buddy system. One goes off to committee boat, one goes off to pin end. You can use a compass, which I'll be explaining in next week's talk. You can just line up and point your bow towards the pin end and see what way your sail falls. If it points towards the pin end, then it's going to be a committee boat start. If it points towards the committee boat. Now those changes are very subtle, but then you make your plan, have a snack, and while you're waiting for your race, keep checking in with what the wind is doing and watch the fleet above. So if you're second start, you have an advantage because you can watch the first fleet and kind of try and see what worked, especially if you're waiting a little while, then you can try and see who made it to the top mark first, and did it come from the right or from the left, or what looked good. So when it comes to food, I always say if the start was at 12, so you'd be launching at least 11. So you'd have a good breakfast like porridge with fruit. Then you might come down, and before you launch, you might have a sandwich or maybe some pasta. And then on the water, I always had a banana before my first start. And then in between races, you might have the other half of the sandwich, or another bar. If you find it hard to eat on the water, try and get some like high calorie bars. Those Cliff bars are pretty good. And then you could have nuts or anything. One of the lads used to always have a boiled egg. It's up to you, whatever you think you're going to be able to stomach. And I never really found it that difficult to eat underwater, but some people used to. So just if you want to be getting in like good nutrition and nice like carby food. So that's that. So during the championships, you need to check your flight every day for the qualifying series, which is the first 6 races. So if you are on schedule, that's the first 3 days. If you don't get 6 races in the first 3 days, it's going to move on into the 4th day. So you need to check that every day, and then every night you need to check the start time for tomorrow and the protest board, just in case. If you think you've been in some sort of situation, just don't go home until protest time closes, and that will be like on the notice board at the club, and the start time and stuff will be online, so you can check that from home. Day 3 has a midweek party. It's usually like some food and a chance to meet other sailors. And day 4 to 6 is gold and silver fleet, or bronze fleet if there's that many sailors. So as I was saying, have good nutrition throughout. Sport drink is really, really handy way of getting your calories in and your carbs in to keep the energy levels high. So you can get some like tabs to put, you just pop them in your water bottle, or you could just buy a big bottle of Lucozade and dilute it. Make sure you have a good brekkie, like porridge. You could even have, let me think, we just always had porridge when we were racing, like overnight oats. You just have to kind of force yourself to eat a little bit, even if you don't feel hungry, especially if it's a windy week. Snacks on the water, I was saying bars, boiled egg, let me think, rice cakes with peanut butter and jam. Trying to think, sandwich, whatever you really feel like. Just like I never really had like chocolate or anything on the water. I just found it a bit sickly. I think you'd want to get something a little bit more nutritious than that, and a good lunch. So if I knew I was going to be waiting on the water, I would bring a Tupperware of pasta with tuna or something easy like that. So after you're done racing on their sail-in, ideally you could have a protein bar or a shake, or else you could have it once you get in. If it's short sail-in, you can just have it once you get in. And most of all, enjoy it and soak it all up. So try to have fun throughout it. I always sailed way better when I was having fun anyways. So in summary, preparation is key. You need to check your flights in a qualifying series. Every day is scheduled for 2 races, but some days it might be 3 if they got 1 or 0 races on the days before that. For World Championships, it is 6 days of racing, so it's a marathon. You just have to kind of stay disciplined throughout it and keep up with your nutrition and Try to get as much sleep as you can and everything. So yeah, be prepared for long days on the water, and because there might be a lot of general recalls, so you could be waiting for ages, especially if you're third start. Yeah, so towards the end you'll be tired, so try to be well rested before, and eat well throughout. Also, I forgot to say, during the championships, especially if it's windy, or even not even if it's windy, I would try and go for like a walk or a really, really slow, easy cycle. Just spin the legs. You just want to get your blood through, you want to get blood flowing through your legs if you've got lactic acid. And lactic acid is that kind of pain in your legs when you're hiking. That's like if your legs feel a bit blocked. You want to you essentially like rinse your legs out. You've probably seen those like rugby players and stuff have those big recovery legs on. That just compresses your legs and it kind of stimulates blood to flow through. But going for a walk is the same thing pretty much. So you'll be saving yourself a bit of money. So that's actually it. It's a little bit shorter than maybe some of the other ones, but if you have any questions, you can ask them now, and that's just my email there if anybody needs to clarify anything.
Aisling, that was great. Thanks very much for that insight. Just, I suppose, if anyone's any questions, put them in. But I do have one question for you, and it stems from last week's session. We had someone who described themselves as 14-year-old. They've never done an event before, and they asked the question, should they enter the 4.7 Worlds this August if they're in Ireland? Can you give them some insight on your first regatta and what you learned and took from it?
My first regatta,
your first World Championship, you could say, yeah?
Yeah, so my first World Championship, it was in Austria. So there's probably a little bit more organization involved than for this guy who's going to be in Dunleary. I forgot to put IRLs on my sail. So I'm talking all about preparation here because I was not the most organized person with spares bag and everything like that, but it's made me more pernickety about it now as a coach. So I would say if you're, I think why not? If he's thinking about whether he should enter it or not, like why not? What do you have to lose? If you can get out in the water as much as you can this summer leading up to it, like it is in August, so you do have quite a bit of time. If you feel like leading up to the regatta, it's going to be too much, or you're looking at the forecast and it's super windy, nobody's going to force you out on the water and stuff like that. So it's such a good opportunity, especially it's in your home. Like even advantage, you're going home to your own bed every night. Your mommy or your daddy is cooking you dinner. It's much simpler. So yeah, I would just be of the opinion, why not?
Definitely get in there. Okay, great. And also we do have, in terms of the Irish Laser Association, there is some provincial regattas we hope to run, depending on everything that goes on. So they would be a great lead up to that World Championship in August. They're usually 2-day events run in each region: Leinster, Ulster, Munster and Connacht. So that would be a good run up to get a bit more experience. We have one other question there at the moment. Do you have any tips for managing nerves coming up to a regatta, any type of regatta?
Yeah, so I definitely was nervous for a lot of competitions, like to the extent that I found it really hard to sleep the night before and everything like that. So the night before competition, I had to get like all my thoughts out of my brain and down on paper so I could just put them away. So I would always write down kind of just like my feelings towards the event. Had to remind myself it was only a boat race at the end of the day. nobody's going to get hurt if I don't do well in the races or whatever. Maybe just my ego, but just remind yourself that it is only a boat race, and you've been training. If you like, you feel prepared, so that's like, you have to bank that and tell yourself that okay, I am prepared, I've done the training. The worst thing that can happen is that something breaks on my boat or I don't do very well. And if I don't do very well, it's only a boat race. It doesn't define you. And then the morning of a competition, I would usually do some meditation to kind of settle myself. And I would always have a little sheet that I would write down my goal for the day. So it could be something as simple as be present when I'm on the water. So try not to be thinking, oh God, what happens if I do bad in the next race? So try and just be present and say, before the race, all you're focusing on is what's the wind doing now? What's my plan for the race? Things like that. And then if you're going throughout a regatta, like sometimes if I was doing really well in regatta, you kind of feel a little bit stressed because you're kind of like, oh God, I'm doing well now, I have so much to lose. But you kind of have to like not let yourself think like that and talk in a way that's kind to yourself, like, oh, I've put myself in this position now because I've put in the work and I deserve to be here. So it's a really good opportunity now for me to show all the hard work I've put in and come out. And I wouldn't even try to think about the end result and just be like, I've worked hard, so every day I'm going to go out in the water and just try and show off all the work I've been putting in.
Okay. So you treat it like one race at a time, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
Good question here. Do you need a coach to enter a competition like this?
No. So with any competition, you don't need a coach. You can, as I said, pop your lunch bag in the pin end. You just have to be a little bit strict with yourself that you're going to check the start time every night. But usually the sailors would text around and just be like, oh, just to let you know, the start time's changed. So you just need to make sure you're not going to get caught out by something like that. Because when I was sailing, I used to rely on my coach to tell me. I would go home straight away, try to get home as fast as I could and rely on him to tell me if I was in a protest, or if sometimes when you finish a race, they might not see your number when you finish a race. So you might be put down as DNF, and all you have to do then is fill out a redress form and pop it into the race office, and it's straightforward enough. But you just have to realize, because I didn't look at results, so you just have to realize that that's happened. So you might just, if you have a friend, just be like, oh, did you look at the results? Do you know if I got my results?
So basically a coach can be a great help, but you don't need a coach if you want to try out one of these.
Yeah. No.
Another question here in relation to measurement. What can go wrong at measurement when you're doing a measurement? Usually only comes up in international regattas. It's not usually for provincial. Is that fair enough? Provincial, when I say Leinster or a local regatta?
No. So yeah, measurement. I don't think there's ever been measurement for an Irish regatta like nationals or provincials. But for what can go wrong, so they have certain rules with like your systems. If you have a pretty normal system, that's not going to be an issue. Sail numbers is a big one, so you need to have the proper measurements of where your sail numbers are. So your sail numbers, they can't be less than 50 millimeters apart from each other, and they have to be along the back of the sail. They have to be a certain measurement from the back of the sail and stuff like that. So say if you got a new sail and you had to put the numbers on it, you have to put it on it a certain way, and there's documents for that. They show you how to put it on and stuff. And then with the girls, they have to have their diamond, so that can be something that goes wrong. Or there actually was a stage there for a while that new boats, the foils were too thick because they measure the thickness of your foils, so people had to sand down their foils, but realistically that's not going to happen to very many people. So you're usually, there's one other, your masts. So they measure if your masts are straight. Obviously the 4.7 bottom mast is already bent, but top masts, especially when they're aluminium, they all have to be straight, so it just makes it fair.
Okay, so there's a few little things that they check.
Yeah, and they check actually battens as well. So sometimes the bits at the end of the battens can fall off, so that won't be allowed.
Okay, but usually it's easy enough to get these things rectified and fixed.
Yeah, and even if you're not 100% sure before you go into measurement, like you don't fail measurement and you can't come back. They just tell you, oh, you have to change this. You go and change it and you come back. The worst is you have to change cell numbers, which is a disaster, to be honest. But that doesn't happen very often.
Okay, great. Okay, I don't think we've any more questions at the moment. I'll say one last question I have for you is something you mentioned there. Is it really bad luck to finish the practice race?
That's just a word on the street. I've never finished one. I go to the top mark and I go home.
You're dead right, because it is true, because I finished one once before and it is bad luck, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Once before. I won't tell you anymore. Well, that was great. That was great, Aisling. Listen, thanks very much for that. Your email was up there on the last slide, so if anyone's any questions, I'm sure they can email you directly.